Welcome to video 2 in the Blueprint of Life series. In this video, we're going to look at evolution in particular and how changes in the environment leads to evolution. And then we're going to look at a quick few case studies that support this. These are our syllabus outcomes coming from our first dot point. So we're going to look at the physical, chemical conditions, and then we're going to look at how organisms compete for resources and how that impacts on evolution. And then again, the case study to show an example of this change in the environment leading to the change in the species. So how exactly does change occur? And it can occur in three ways. So it can occur by changes in physical conditions, changes in chemical conditions, or just a competition for resources. Now, in each environment, the conditions will be different. So just because there's a change in one environment doesn't mean that the same thing is happening as another because of the differences in selective pressures. And selective pressure acts on organisms as changes occur in the environment. And some of these changes might include a change in the environment, change in competition, change in predators, and then the influence of diseases. And this provides pressure on the organisms. And again, we're looking for those characteristics that are favorable, allowing those organisms to survive these pressures and resulting in evolution. So changes in environment might be from a range of biotic or abiotic factors. And if we're looking at physical and chemical, both are abiotic factors. In particular, physical conditions relate to things like temperature, the availability of water, light, wind, and tides. But if we're looking at chemical conditions, we're looking at the concentrations of different gases and the pH and how that might change in an environment. Changes in these abiotic conditions can lead to changes in biotic conditions, which changes the availability of resources. This can lead to competition, and also because of that variation, some organisms might have a characteristic that allow them to be better suited to the environment. Organisms that can compete successfully in this new environment are said to have an adaptation. Now, this adaptation doesn't come about. This adaptation is from the variation that they possessed, and because it has allowed them to survive, to reproduce, and allow them to cope better with the selective pressure, it is now called an adaptation. So here we have a bit of a diagram of how a variation becomes an adaptation. So we see a change in environment. This causes a limitation on some resources, but other resources prosper, putting a selective pressure on the environment and the organisms that live in it. Because of this change in competition, there is what we call survival of the fittest. So the organisms with those characteristics that make them better suited to that environment and to those changes are able to survive, to reproduce. Therefore, there is an adaptation of living organisms to the environment. In terms of evolution, these changes in the environment and these resulting adaptations, we can either see macroevolution or microevolution. And macroevolution are the changes that take place over millions of years, measured as geological time, and usually results in new species arising. Microevolution, on the other hand, take place over shorter periods of time and result in changes in population, but not necessarily producing a new species. Here we have some modern examples of how changes in an environment can change the population of different organisms. So the first example are changes in the mosquito population as a result of the use of insecticide DDT. So in this example, there are some mosquitoes that possess a characteristic that allow in their genetic makeup that allows them to be immune or tolerant of the insecticide DDT. Therefore, they were able to survive and reproduce. So therefore, in the mosquito population, we have an overabundance of mosquitoes who now have this specific resistance to the insecticide. Similar in terms of bacterial population, so some of the bacterial colonies possess the tolerance and the immunity to the antibiotics, and they're able to survive and reproduce. In terms of the peppered moth, we're looking at a change in the physical conditions of where the peppered moths lived, and they lived in forests. And there was two kinds of peppered moths. There was the grey creamy color, and then there was the dark variation. So as a result of the Industrial Revolution, um, the fungi that grew on the trees was no longer able to grow on the trees due to the increase in pollution. So therefore, it revealed the dark color of the tree trunks. Because of the dark color of the tree trunks, the dark moths, which had previously been eaten by birds because they weren't able to camouflage, were now camouflaging in the dark trees, as opposed to the lighter colored moths, which now were heavily sought out by birds and other predators. So therefore, we see a change in the population. Again, similar things in terms of the sheep blowfly and insecticides. There is a specific example in terms of snow gum populations, which the height at which the snow gum can grow will change as a result of the altitude in which they're growing in. And then the final example is competition for resources. So we see changes in populations due to the presence of the cane toad, which is an introduced species in Australia. So sometimes they now become killed by the cane toad, or the food chain is disrupted because of other changes in the ecosystem, which can result in changes in population, and therefore some organisms being more suited to their environment. But these will form your case studies, which you'll complete for this lesson. Thank you for watching video 2. Make sure you tune in for video 3.